You're listening to another holiday-themed episode of the Something in the Wilderness podcast. My name's Steve, and if you've tuned in before, you know that I always choose one Andrew McMahon song to talk about. Since it's December, I figured we ought to find a song from Andrew's catalog that brings those seasonal vibes. If you're an Andrew fan, you probably know that he doesn't have very many Christmas songs. So instead, I found his take on somewhat of a holiday classic. This is the second official cover song that's been the subject of an episode here on the Something in the Wilderness podcast. As I've mentioned before on the show, Andrew also doesn't record a lot of cover songs. So a debate on whether this is actually a Christmas song is fair, though, and I'll talk about why that is. Alright, there's no way I'm going to remember when I first heard this song by any artist because I'm sure I was really young and it was on the radio somewhere. I am sure, though, I heard this song plenty of times throughout the Christmas season growing up, and even into my adult years, of course. But I don't have any specific memories with it. Coincidentally, though, Andrew's version's probably one of those tracks that slid right past me initially, since it wasn't released as a single, and it didn't get any airplay on typical radio. But in the last 5 years, it's been a hobby of mine, which I mentioned in an episode last December, to hunt down any unique Christmas songs, or find Christmas cover songs by artists I just enjoy. I'm much more into the modern versions of songs, and I'm always trying to beef up my modern Christmas playlist. So I keep an eye on the new songs on Spotify every week around this time of year, and I read all the music news. And I have learned that a lot of artists are making Christmas songs and Christmas albums every single year. It's almost too many to keep up with. But this song arguably fits into the Christmas song category, since although What Are You Doing New Year's Eve is technically about a holiday that comes right after Christmas. But of course it tends to get lumped into this season with all the other holiday classics. The band we're talking about today is Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, and the album it came from was the Holidays Rule Volume 2 compilation. It was never released on a proper Andrew album. The compilation was released on October 13th, 2017. For context, that was 8 months after Zombies on Broadway, and just over a year before Upside Down Flowers. This is the second compilation that included holiday-themed songs from artists from a lot of different genres. Oddly, The Head and the Heart recorded the exact same song for Holidays Rule Volume 1, which came out 5 years earlier. Although their version is piano-based, I would say it's pretty different. So originally, this song was first recorded in 1947 by a woman named Margaret Whiting. I've included her version in the show notes. The first time it charted, though, which I assume is how it became popular among the masses, was when the Orioles recorded it in 1949. They were a 5-piece R&B group that had just made a name for themselves the previous year, crossing over into the pop world with a hit called It's Too Soon to Know. I'll include their version in the show notes as well. Some have also credited the Orioles to have been an influence on rock and roll and doo-wop. Their version of this song, though, actually has multiple members singing lead vocals. I know it's at least 2 different singers, it might be 3. The song's of course been covered by countless artists since the 40s besides Andrew. To name a bunch, Ella Fitzgerald, Johnny Mathis, The Carpenters, Harry Connick Jr., Barbra Streisand, Bette Midler, Seth MacFarlane, Norah Jones, and most recently that I could find, Steve Perry. I gotta admit, I didn't expect to hear this particular name on a list of artists releasing Christmas albums in 2021, let alone releasing any new music at all. But if you're unaware, Steve Perry is the former lead singer and songwriter of Journey, singing on all their most popular songs. There's also a few artists who have done this song as a duet, including Rod Stewart, who utilized Ella Fitzgerald's original vocals in his version, as well as a band called Johnny Swim. The Head and the Heart did the same thing on their aforementioned version as well, incorporating both male and female vocals. I don't have much technical info on the recording of Andrew's version, since it was only released on a comp. But just based on the 2 albums that it was sandwiched between of his, I'd suggest that it sounds more like an Upside Down Flowers era track than a Zombies on Broadway track. However, I did find 2 websites that list Tommy English as one of the artists on this track. That name might sound familiar to you because Tommy produced 2 songs off of Zombies on Broadway. Now, I'm not sure if he played any instruments on the track, but like the songs Tommy produces on Zombies, this song is almost entirely electronic, including the piano, so I assume he's the producer on the track. I was surprised to learn recently that Andrew has actually performed this one live, at least once according to Setlist FM. Fittingly, it was on New Year's Eve 2017 going into 2018, just after his version came out actually. He was opening for one of his idols, Billy Joel, so although he only played 9 songs in that set, one of them was What Are You Doing New Year's Eve? And I'm sure the crowd loved that because even if Billy fans weren't familiar with Andrew, most everyone there probably knew this song and were excited for the timing. I mean, how often does an artist who records a New Year's Eve song get to play a New Year's Eve show and play that song? So we may have to wait until the next time Andrew performs on New Year's Eve to hear this one again. Of course, this song's been performed live by a multitude of other artists throughout the years, presumably as early as the late 40s when this song was first written and performed. And it was performed live as recently as last week, according to Setlist FM, by a band called The Feeling in London. Now, you may know them because coincidentally, after listening to a handful of songs by The Feeling, they're not really too far off from the sound of Jack's Mannequin, if you want to give them a listen. And even more coincidentally, their sound has evolved like Andrew's, and their latest song, This Was Me, which was written for a musical by the lead singer, it sounds like it could be an Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness song. Okay, a bit off topic, but let's get back to it. But since we've talked about her here before, and because Andrew's a big fan, I'll also mention here that Casey Musgraves performed What Are You Doing New Year's Eve at least 5 times in 2016 on her holiday tour, the same year she released her own Christmas album, which included this song. I don't have any information on how often or if this was even performed live at all in the late 40s by the first 2 artists who recorded it. But with that said, let's get into the songwriting behind the song. It wasn't actually written by Margaret Whiting herself. The song was written by Frank Loesser, whose name you may or may not know. But even if you don't know his name, you definitely know his work. Most notably for what we're talking about here today, Frank Loesser not only wrote What Are You Doing New Year's Eve, but he wrote another classic but controversial holiday hit. This other song's been a hot topic of debate in recent years based on the lyrics. It could, of course, only be the well-known duet, Baby It's Cold Outside, which he wrote in 1944. I found this tidbit pretty interesting, though, because I never would have put these 2 songs in the same category, except that I hear them both played around this time of year. Side note, Baby It's Cold Outside originated as a song that Frank and his wife Lynn performed at private parties for friends. Lynn was a little upset when Frank sold the rights to the song in 1949 to MGM Studios because she always thought of it as their song. Though Frank did go on to win an Academy Award for its inclusion in the film Neptune's Daughter, in which it was actually performed twice. The second time it was performed, there's a reverse in the gender roles, which, to me, seems pretty ahead of its time. Also worthy of note, Frank Loesser was Jewish, which definitely explains why, although he wrote 2 songs that have become well-known holiday songs, neither reference the Christmas holiday whatsoever. Besides these 2 holiday classics, you may also know some of Frank Loesser's work writing both Broadway and film musicals. His most well-known shows include Guys and Dolls and How to Succeed at Business Without Really Trying. He also wrote songs for a bunch of other musicals during that era. What Are You Doing New Year's Eve was actually a rare one for him, in that it was one of the few he ever wrote that wasn't for a musical. There's still time, though. Maybe a future holiday musical could incorporate the song into it somehow. Just saying. Ironically, Frank didn't write this song as a holiday song. If you read the lyrics, it's about asking your current love what they're doing for New Year's Eve. But what time of year is it? According to his daughter, Susan Loesser, who wrote a book about his life and his music, Frank didn't appreciate this song getting play around the holidays because it took away from the meaning of the song. The novelty of What Are You Doing New Year's Eve is actually that the holiday is so far off into the future that it's quite a bold statement even to ask your new love what they're doing on an important holiday that you'd usually spend with friends and family. So much for a holiday classic. Sorry, Frank, but I just can't imagine listening to this song any other time of year. But that's the influence of pop culture for you. So, listener, if you're single and you meet someone special early in the year this coming year, feel free to try this song out on them and see how that goes. I don't know, it could be romantic, I guess, but it also could feel a little too forward. If nothing else, though, it's a good conversation starter. So let's talk a little bit about the sound of Andrew's version. While Margaret Whiting's recording from 1947 had more of a big band feel, Andrew's version takes on a more modern and electronic feel. Most of the versions I've listened to are based around the piano, so it does make sense that Andrew took a shot at this one in particular. Though there are a handful of versions of this where parts are sung by both male and female vocals, I don't hear anyone else on Andrew's track, but he does add some atmospheric backing vocals there. My favorite part of Andrew's version, though, is actually that instrumental synth piece that starts around the 150 mark. I just love the sound of that instrument, and whenever the synth sounds similar in Andrew's songs, it kind of perks up my ears. It's definitely more defined here, but I'm thinking of Andrew's songs like Maps for the Getaway and Learn to Dance, and I'm sure there's a lot more, but those are the ones that come to mind right now. I just want to point out that a lot of very, very good singers have sung this song. So I think if you put Andrew's version up against vocal performers like Ella Fitzgerald and Johnny Mathis and even American Idol contestants like Katharine McPhee and Clay Aiken, it might sound to the average ear like something's lacking with Andrew's version. But I like that he sings it like Andrew sings, and he doesn't try to sound like any other artist when he's singing it. Andrew's rendition clocks in at 3 minutes and 2 seconds, but if you check out all these other versions, they vary pretty greatly. Most are at least 3 minutes, but some are as long as 5. More instrumental breaks in some cases, longer introductions in others, and then in some, longer outros. Andrew kept it pretty close to the length of the original, though. Alright, the main thing I want to talk about with lyrics is my curiosity about the opening lines. When you think of this song, if you know it, what are the opening lines? You got them in your head? Almost every version of this song begins with the opening line. Maybe it's much too early in the game, but I thought I'd ask you just the same. What are you doing New Year's Eve? That's the chorus. Okay, some songs begin with the chorus, and that's fine. But here's an interesting fact. Both Margaret Whiting and the Orioles begin the song this way. As far as I know, they were the first 2 artists to ever record the song, right? But Ella Fitzgerald began her version a different way when she recorded it for her 1960 Christmas album. She opens the song with these lines. When the bells all ring and the horns all blow, and the couples we know are fondly kissing, will I be with you, or will I be among the missing? So which version is right? Which is the way that Frank Loesser wrote it? According to Genius.com, the official lyrics written by Frank Loesser include those opening lines I just read, and the website also calls this the first verse. Since the 50s, there are a variety of these artists who have started the song with the line about the bells and horns, whereas more often the artist will go right into the original opening line, maybe it's too early in the game. So I have to wonder why. Why do some artists skip that whole first verse the way Frank Loesser wrote it? And why was it skipped originally? And because of the most popular modern-day versions, most of us never even hear that first verse. It sure makes sense in the context of the song, especially the part where they sing, will I be with you or will I be among the missing? Speculating that their relationship may not last that long, and the author has to imagine that it's possible their current love may have moved on by then. There's nothing inherently wrong with these lines, so now I really want to know why most artists these days leave it out. Well, after listening to over 30 versions of this song multiple times, I have settled on a few that I enjoy. There's this pretty unique artist that I just learned about named Puddle's Pity Party. It's a guy dressed like a sad clown and doesn't speak at his live shows at all. He does mostly covers, maybe all covers, I don't know. His recent live shows pre-pandemic were a Vegas residency, so he must draw a pretty good crowd. He's actually currently touring as well. He's going to be opening for Tenacious D in the new year. What I like most about his version, though, is that it's the most upbeat version that I've ever heard of this song, incorporating a bit of a punk rock riff throughout, and the way he sings it is kind of more aggressive, so it sounds like a rock song, something I haven't heard in any other version of the song. Ironically, though, most of his songs are slower songs that I've listened to. To get an idea, his most streamed song on Spotify is Tears for Fears' Mad World. And if you're interested in checking it out, listen to Blink-182's All the Small Things by Puddle's Pity Party. Trust me, you've never heard that song done this way. I also really like the classic sound of Margaret Whiting and Ella Fitzgerald voices on this song, and Casey Musgraves is actually able to replicate the sound pretty well. I did find that there's a pretty equal amount of men and women who have sung the song over the years. But I do appreciate Andrew's What Are You Doing New Year's Eve, though. I like that it sounds like modern Andrew. His vocals and piano are front and center on the version, right where they should be, and I really don't need him to do anything different. I usually do appreciate cover songs where the artist takes the original material and they make it their own. That's all I'm looking for. Well, I think I'm ready for New Year's Eve now that I've listened to this song so much. I did grow to enjoy the song more after hearing it so many times, though, but I guess that's the trick of a good catchy pop song. I'm actually surprised at how much I like this one, though, considering it's not a holiday time song that I would have even put in my top 10 before. But with that said, I think I'm good not hearing this one again for the rest of the season. I'll welcome it back with open arms next year, but I really need to mix it up for the rest of December. And hey, at least there's an even better song about New Year's that Andrew actually wrote that I can listen to when the clock strikes midnight in a couple weeks. Maybe we'll cover that one next year. Thank you for listening. If you have some quiet time around the holidays and you're hoping for more holiday Andrew-related content, I talked about airports at the beginning of the month, and last year we covered Forget December, a Something Corporate song, and also our favorite alternative Christmas song, The Lights and Buzz by Jack's Mannequin. I am seeking some new guests for the new year, so if you want to discuss a song with me, email me at somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com or DM me on Instagram. So, what are you doing New Year's Eve? Whatever it is, I hope it's fun, and I hope you all stay healthy out there.